Hello, welcome ladies and gentlemen to today's tutorial. Today we are going to talk about the anatomical snuff box. Yes, it is so called because yes, it used to be the site where people, I think currently they still use it, where people put what we call snuff or powdered cocaine in there and get it sniffed. So it's actually a triangular depression, okay, which you find it on the dorsum, lateral aspect of the dorsum of the hand. So one thing that you find is that for you to actually appreciate this anatomical snuff box, then you have to actually, fully extend your thumb, okay, so that you can see this triangular depression over here. So let's look at actually the borders, let's look at the content and, combine it with what you call some clinical application. So as you can see, this is the anatomical snuff box. Now we are going to describe, the borders where, the hand is, supinated, okay, this way. So that is one thing that we are going to see. Now this is a triangular depression, okay. So on it, with the hand actually supinated, medially will be bounded by what we call extensor pollicis longus. So this is the muscle, the tendon of extensor pollicis longus. And then on the lateral aspect, there will be two tendons. More proximally, okay, will be the tendon of extensor pollicis brevis. Extensor pollicis brevis, where you can see my pen running. And then a bit further away, we'll have what we call the abductor pollicis longus, the tendon of abductor pollicis longus. Now remember that we are not talking about the fleshy muscles, but the tendons of these muscles. So it means that on the lateral aspect, there are two tendons which are contributing, okay, to the border. The lateral border will be by what we call, extensor pollicis brevis and abductor pollicis, longus. Tendons of these, muscles. And for you to actually appreciate the muscles, then you have to trace the tendons more distally. Okay, so as you trace it distally, now you can see this is what we call extensor pollicis brevis. This is a fleshy muscle. Okay, and then if you trace this one is a fleshy muscle of what we call, abductor pollicis, what we call longus. Okay, so that's one thing that we are going to find actually over here. Now what will happen is that proximally, because this is more to the lateral aspect of the dorsum of the hand, then it should be related to what we call the styloid process of the radius. So the proximal border will be related to the styloid process of the radius. Then of course, this triangle will be completed where, there will be that kind of, meeting of, the tendon of, extensor pollicis, longus, and of course brevis, okay, at the thumb area. So that is one thing that we find. Now how about the floor? Let's talk about the roof. Yes, of course the roof will be skin, skin, and of course subcutaneous tissue, skin. And then the floor, there will be two main, bones coming from actually the carpus. So two main carpal bones who contribute to the formation of the floor of this, box. And proximally, we will have what you call the scaphoid, and more distally, we will have what you call trapezium, forming what we call the floor of this, box or fossa, triangular depression over here. Now one thing is that, having talked about the floor, what will happen is that, yes, very importantly, now if the most fractured bone, yes, of the carpus is what we call the scaphoid. Yes, the scaphoid is also a content of this depression, anatomical snuff box. Therefore if you fall on an outstretched hand, then what will happen is that the likely bone to get fractured will be the scaphoid. Now mainly, yes, the scaphoid is going to get fractured because mainly it's not mainly designed for actually for support or for strength, but actually to help in some kind of mobility in there. So if the scaphoid gets fractured, then what will happen is that it will result in what you call tenderness, and pain in the snuff box area. Now one important thing about this is that if the the scaphoid gets fractured, then what will happen is that, yes, invariably what happens is that the bone, okay, if there is a bone, then what will happen is that we have the proximal part of the bone and we have the distal part of the bone. Now the distal part of the bone gets a supply and then also gives some to the proximal part of the bone. So there's an artery which supplies it, okay, originate from the distal part of the bone, supplies the distal part, and then also supplies the proximal part. So if this bone gets fractured and then divides into two, okay, I mean a proximal fragment and a distal fragment, then it means that, yes, of course, the distal fragment receive blood supply, but the distal fragment will not receive enough, wouldn't receive blood supply, because its supply will be cut, okay, because of the fracture, and this will result in what we call avascular necrosis, so that the bone cells over here will begin to die. Okay, they will begin to die in the proximal portion, will begin to die. So that is why, yes, if someone falls on an outstretched hand, yes, the likelihood is that, if the proximal fragment of the bone will suffer from what we call avascular necrosis. Now, how about the content of this snuff box? Now, the content of this snuff box, yes, we can see one over here. This red colored structure over here is known as, it's a branch of, it's actually the radial, artery, coming from the radial artery, which will actually, cross it, as it moves this way, crossing it, medially, okay, to actually leave it, and then it will actually run through the two hairs of what we call the first dorsal interossei. Okay, so running through it and then actually becoming what we call, in the palm, contributing to what we call the formation of the deep palmar arch. But remember that the deep palmar arch mainly, yes, is contributed by what we call the the branch of what we call the radial artery, as it goes into after passing through two hairs of the first dorsal interossei. But of course, it will be completed by what we call the deep branch, which will be coming from what we call the ulnar artery. Now, in addition, yes, we are also going to have what we call this branch, which is the superficial branch. Okay, this branch over here, which is the superficial branch of the radial nerve. So this superficial branch of radial nerve, yes, will cross it and then will actually supply the dorsal 3.5 aspects of the hand area, as well as of course the dorsal aspect of the digit. So that's one thing that we are going to find. Yes, in addition, we also have a content which is not shown here, which is actually what we call the cephalic vein, and the cephalic vein will actually arise as continuation of what we call the dorsal arch, the dorsal venous network in the hand area, and then to ascend laterally, yes, of course, and then in the cubital fossa, will join actually the basilic vein at the median cubital vein. So that is one thing that we are going to find. So, ladies and gentlemen, this was actually a quick tutorial trying to explain what we call the anatomical snuff box. May God richly bless you. Yes, so one thing is that because the radial artery is a content of the snuff box, then of course you can also take the radial pulse in the anatomical snuff box. Alright, so thank you very much for your audience.